гражданская активистка, она еще по профессии физик-математик, и нам очень важно поддерживать женщин, да, как вы видите, в структуре правозащитного сообщества их в одних странах больше, в других странах меньше, но даже вот посмотрев на ту картину, кто занимается правами человека, в основном это женщины. Они тоже под угрозами. Я вот как раз Hui Hui Хан хотела бы слово предоставить, она мама 3 детей, и мне сначала было интересно, когда мы только-только познакомились, как они быстро собирают деньги. То есть фандрайзинг существует. Потом я начала узнавать законодательство, что только 1 сингапурский доллар в день можно в качестве доната делать. Потом я начала осознавать, что сингапурское гражданство можно купить за $1 миллион. И потом только я увидела, что вот как в этом году огромным штрафом сама Хан Hui Hui подверглась, и вот она расскажет специфику этого государства. Пожалуйста, госпожа Хан, вам слово.
Hi, hello. My name is Hui Hui and I'm from Singapore. So I campaign mainly on our public housing, public healthcare, and our fundamental human rights in Singapore. But the situation in Singapore is such that there is no ombudsman in Singapore. When this topic was being brought up by the opposition politician in Singapore Parliament, what did the government say was that there is no need to have them, because if you were to have someone to check on the government, then who is there to check on the person who is checking on the government? So the government say that in order to save on public resources, might as well not have this kind of check and balances in Singapore. Next is that we still have death penalty in Singapore. There are people who actually get hanged in Singapore, even though the United Nations and other human rights organizations have raised about this kind of issues in Singapore. This is still very prevalent. And even though the government say that hanging is because it is mainly for drug use, the thing is Singapore has a lot of drug abusers, such as there are drug abusers who so intoxicated they abuse their own children until they die as well. Next up is that human rights defender, they have to face very heavy fines when they try to campaign on their human rights issue, be it for LGBT, for children, for women, or whatever issue they try to talk about. The government will find one way or another in order to fine them. And even if they are not fined, the government will issue something called legal costs in order to get these people who try to speak up against government policy penalized, and use this as a kind of deterrence for people to speak up against the government. In Singapore, when these people are actually being fined, they have to raise the fine from Singaporeans in Singapore, because in Singapore, the government has set laws in place in order to make foreign funding illegal. So while other countries, they can accept foreign funding or at least a small amount of foreign funding, if any Singaporean activists, bloggers, human rights defender try to receive money from foreigners, they will be immediately arrested, and then they will face even higher fines, because this is illegal and against the laws in Singapore. The government also claims that in Singapore we have public freedom of expression or freedom of public assembly, that you can protest in specific area, but that is actually not true at all. There are people who protested in the area called the Hong Lim Park Speakers Corner, yet the Singapore government arrested them, interrogated them, fined and jailed them as well. Not only that, there are people who hold one-man protests, and these people get arrested and detained in Singapore judicial system. Next, there are people who say that, okay, we can try and raise awareness about what's happening in Singapore. That is also not true at all, because it is impossible for you to publish or disseminate your own opinion. The government actually have law in place to say that this is causing obstruction to the judicial system. Therefore, you're not supposed to talk about ongoing cases. Because of this, a lot of people get abused, and their case cannot have any form of people speaking out until the whole entire case is over. One example is that children get abused until they die, and nobody are allowed to talk about it until the entire case is over, until the government close the case a few years down the road. But until now, the government did not do anything to improve on this kind of situation. There is also high risk and high barrier for people to try and talk about human rights in Singapore, because lawyers don't even dare to defend them in court. All lawyers in Singapore need to have a lawyer license. And if you try to speak up or defend people, you yourself as a lawyer will either have your lawyer license terminated, you will have your own lawyer license or threatened, suspended, and therefore lawyers, even if they want to help, they help in the background but not on the court trying to defend you unless you are going to plead guilty. So this is what a lot of people are doing. Either they plead guilty in court or they try to negotiate a sentence, and in the end the media will paint them black. So why is it that the media is always painting human rights defender, painting all the activists and bloggers who speak up as someone who is negative and put them in a bad light? Is that in Singapore, our government has those kind of media authority, a statutory board. Then after that, what they do is that if you want to talk about government issues, about government policies, political issues, you need to give the government a bond of $50,000. And if you try to do something that is like you want to speak out on human rights issue, they will then say that this is not allowed and they can have the right to take away your fund, which is, for example, you give them this 50,000 Singapore dollar, about maybe 30 to 40 American dollar. Then after that, they can say that what you are doing is illegal and wrong. It's either you take down this article promoting your human rights or talk about human rights violation in Singapore, or I will confiscate your this sum of money. So a lot of media company in Singapore, due to this fear of financial losses, they have no choice but to comply with the government request. The Singapore government until today has only signed 4 UN human rights treaties, which are on women, children, disability and race. However, the Singapore government did not sign treaties on our civil political rights or our social economic rights. And even though the Singapore government signed the treaty on children rights, the thing is children in Singapore are not being protected at all. And the entire system is so bureaucratic, a lot of children are suffering. There are also no real NGOs and independent NGOs in Singapore. Take for example, in Singapore recently, there are children who get abused by intoxicated parents to the situation whereby they literally died in Singapore. And yet, there are no workers, no counselors, no teacher trying to protect this child at all. And the reason is because everybody are just following the protocol. Yet, the protocol has a lot of loopholes where they did not follow because they do not want to do the work. There are no people really with the heart to protect children in Singapore, to protect human rights in Singapore, and therefore Singapore's human right is still going all the way down at the bottom because no one is speaking up on it, and Singaporeans have no place to raise this kind of awareness. Our media is being controlled. We cannot hold assembly on the public. We cannot share our information until the entire case is over. Until today, the Singapore government has laws called the Internal Security Acts as well as sedition, which discriminate people as well as stop people from speaking up on what is really right, the truth, as well as honest things that's going on the ground. Thank you.
Спасибо, госпожа Хан.